What's up, guys? It's MB Boxing, and today I'm going to be predicting the outcome of Anthony Joshua versus Dillian Whyte 2, and this is going to be a 12-rounder in the heavyweight division, and this fight is going to be Saturday, August 12th from the O2 Arena in London, England, and this fight is going to be broadcasted on DAZN pay-per-view. And to get into both fighters' resumes, Anthony Joshua, fighting out of England, holds a record of 25 wins, 3 defeats, with 22 wins coming by way of knockout. He is an Olympic gold medalist, winning his medal in the London 2012 Summer Games, bringing gold home for his country at that time. And he's also a former two-time unified three-belt WBA, WBO, and IBF heavyweight world champion. And he's also currently ranked number 3 by BoxRec in the heavyweight division. And Joshua himself is also universally recognized as like a top 3 to top 5 heavyweight right now. But to get into his losses and his best wins, he recently has taken a lot of losses and has had some pretty lackluster performances. He lost to Alexander Usyk by split decision just almost a year ago. And that was in their second fight. And then in their first fight, he lost by unanimous decision to Usyk. And he also has that huge upset TKO loss to Andy Ruiz in their first fight. And that took place back in 2019 in Joshua's U.S. debut, where he went into the fight as like more than a 10-1 underdog. And from the boxing outsiders looking in, just the casual fans who just tune in to watch a fight, they saw Joshua as this huge force with almost all knockout wins, had the body of a Greek statue, and Andy Ruiz was the guy that was much shorter, much more out of shape than Joshua. And even when in the face-off leading up to the fight, you could just tell it looked like David versus Goliath. And then Joshua got stopped, and it was the upset of 2019. And also when he fought Alexander Usyk, I mean, there were a lot of people picking Usyk, but I believe Joshua was a pretty sizable favorite as well. Maybe like a 3-1 or 4-1 favorite, considering Usyk was the smaller man. But Usyk outboxed Joshua, in my opinion, both times. But to get into some of Joshua's best wins, he has defeated Kubrat Pulev by knockout. He's also defeated Charles Martin by knockout to become a heavyweight world champion in 2016. He's defeated Andy Ruiz by unanimous decision in their rematch, where he fought much more cautious. He also defeated Alexander Povetkin by TKO. He has defeated Joseph Parker by a dominant unanimous decision. He's also defeated Vladimir Klitschko by TKO in an all-out heavyweight war. It was one of the best fights of the 2010s. He's also defeated Dillian Whyte by TKO in their first fight, and he's also coming off of a pretty decent unanimous decision victory over Jermaine Franklin. In that fight, he showed that his killer instinct is kind of gone, but he got the job done, winning pretty clear against Franklin. But Joshua, in recent time, since he's been taking a lot of losses and has definitely been looking much different since when we saw him years ago, just knocking guys out. He's been taking a lot of criticism, but I mean, you can't help to notice, but his resume is very, very good. And I could say the same for his opponent. Just to get into Dillian Whyte's resume, he too is fighting out of England. He holds a record of 29 wins, 3 defeats, with 19 wins coming by way of knockout. He's currently ranked number 5 by BoxRec, and he's recognized around there universally, around like number 5, number 6, even number 7 in the heavyweight division. And he's also a 2-time former champion, but instead of being a 3-belt unified champion like Joshua was, Dillian Whyte is a 2-time former WBC Interim heavyweight world champion. But to get into some of Whyte's defeats, he has lost by TKO to Tyson Fury. In the 6th round, he got caught with a brutal uppercut, got finished. And that was in April, I believe, unless it was in early May, but I think it was late April of 2022. He also lost by KO in what was my pick for knockout of the year in 2021. It was a brutal uppercut knockout loss to Alexander Povetkin, where he got caught with one punch when he was winning the fight. And then he also lost by TKO to Anthony Joshua in their first fight. But in all 3 of those fights, he got caught with brutal uppercuts and finished. The Tyson Fury fight, a big uppercut and a push sent Whyte flat on his back. Against Povetkin, the first time, he got caught with one brutal uppercut from a nice feint from Povetkin that sent Whyte out cold. And then in the first Joshua fight, Joshua rocked him, came in with a huge uppercut, and sending Whyte out on the ropes. So uppercuts are really Dillian Whyte's KO button. If you land an uppercut on the chin of Dillian Whyte, he's going to go to sleep. And we saw that in all three of his defeats. But when it comes to some of Dillian Whyte's best wins, he has defeated Alexander Povetkin by TKO in their second fight, a dominant showing that was. He also defeated Oscar Rivas by unanimous decision. He defeated Derek Chisora by split decision in their first fight and brutal knockout in their second fight. He's defeated Joseph Parker by unanimous decision in a war. He's also defeated Robert Helenius by unanimous decision. And in his last fight, he had a pretty lackluster performance against Jermaine Franklin. Both these guys, Joshua and Whyte, are coming off fights against Jermaine Franklin. Joshua looked much better than Whyte did. Whyte had a really close fight, won by majority decision, and I believe I scored that fight a draw, but I think it was more edged in favor of Franklin. I had it 6-6, but I think I definitely had it 6-6 or 7-5 for Franklin. I thought it was a really close fight that Whyte underperformed in, but Joshua definitely performed better, winning pretty clearly over Franklin. So in my opinion, this fight is once again going to go in favor of Anthony Joshua. Their first fight happened in late 2015 when these two guys were undefeated prospects. Now both these guys, Joshua, a former two-time world champion, fought some of the best guys in the world. Same with Dillian Whyte, fought some of the best guys in the world. Now years later, when Joshua's in his mid-30s, same with Whyte, they're doing it again. And a lot of people are pretty mad about this fight, saying it doesn't need to happen. I kind of agree. It doesn't necessarily need to happen, but I think it's a pretty intriguing fight. I'm definitely excited to watch it. But I really think this fight's going to go the same way. I think Joshua is going to get a stoppage victory over Dillian Whyte. And I know Anthony Joshua recently hasn't looked as powerful like the powerhouse he was prior to the Andy Ruiz loss. And really, Anthony Joshua, like I mentioned before, he's been getting a lot of criticism. And I could definitely see why, because he looked unstoppable just a few years ago. Back in earlier 2019, he looked like an unstoppable force. He was like 20-0 or 21-0 with like 20 knockouts or 19 knockouts or whatever. Like, he was just an unstoppable force. Just stopped Klitschko in an all-out war. Beat Povetkin, beat those guys pretty easily. Or the Klitschko fight wasn't that easy, but just being able to stop those guys, drop those guys multiple times. I mean, he really looked like the next heavyweight great. And although he's had a pretty good career, I mean, recently he's just been taking some tough losses. He got outboxed by Usyk, had that breakdown in the ring in their rematch after the fight when he was on the microphone spewing just some random stuff. That was a really crazy thing to witness. And, I mean, hopefully in this fight he's in a better headspace than he was in that second Usyk fight. But I think in terms of how this fight's going to go, I think Joshua's going to be fighting cautiously like he has been usually. I mean, Joshua, prior to that Andy Ruiz loss, where that one hook to the head, that one hook to the head that Ruiz landed in their first fight changed Anthony Joshua's trajectory in his career. Ever since that one hook to the temple that Ruiz landed to hurt him in that third round of their first fight, Joshua's been fighting sort of defensively and not... He's changed trainers multiple times, and now he's sort of fighting on the outside in mid-range as opposed to brawling, going forward, throwing big shots, knocking guys out. Now he's just trying to score points, and it's obviously not as exciting. But if it gets the job done, it gets the job done. But it didn't against Usyk twice and against Ruiz the first time. But in terms of how this fight's going to go, I don't think Joshua is going to try and brawl with Dillian Whyte because Anthony Joshua... He's a pretty sizable favorite in this one at this point. When I'm filming this video, I believe he's like a 4-1, maybe 5-1 favorite, maybe even more than that. But I'm pretty sure he's a pretty sizable favorite going into this one, and I definitely see why, because Dillian Whyte looked kind of bad against Jermaine Franklin. Didn't look that good. Looked very slow, very sloppy, very tired. But hopefully for this fight, Dillian Whyte's training hard. But I think the only way Dillian Whyte could win this fight is if he lands one big hook on Joshua that rocks him. I mean, we saw in the first fight when Joshua was a young kid. Joshua got hit with a big hook, got wobbled in the second round of their fight. But he stays solid. At this point in his career, Joshua, it almost looks like if he gets hit with one shot, he's going to go down because of how sort of cautious he is when he's fighting. So who knows? I think Dillian Whyte could definitely win this fight. If he lands one big shot on Joshua, that could change the entire fight. I really think that's the only way Whyte could win. But I think Joshua could either win this fight by decision or knockout. And I know those are the only two ways that a fight could go if a fighter's going to win. Obviously, there's disqualification or whatever. But, I mean, in terms of Joshua winning, I think he's going to try and fight on the outside and mid-range. I think he's just going to try and counter Whyte. I think Whyte's going to be coming forward in this one. But I think at some point in the fight, Joshua is going to catch Whyte with a good counter, maybe a counter uppercut that drops him or even just really hurts him enough to get the fight stopped. Or I see Whyte getting dropped at some point really badly and it could get stopped. But I think Anthony Joshua is going to get the job done in this one. I think he's going to be fighting very calm, very cautiously, like he has been recently. And in terms of how I see this fight going round by round, I think the earlier rounds are going to be probably Whyte's best bet to win any points on the judges' scorecards. But either way, I don't see this fight going the distance. I think that Whyte might be able to edge like one or two of the first 3 rounds just based off of activity, because recently Joshua hasn't been as active as he's usually been, or as he's known for prior to that Ruiz loss. But I think that after the first 3, it could be 29-28 either way. But then once like round 4, 5, and 6 start, I think Joshua's going to start to land a bit more on Whyte. I think Whyte's going to become a bit more sloppy, trying to land more shots, trying to land power shots on Joshua. And I think Joshua is going to be catching him with some nice counters, especially those counter straight right hands Joshua has. Even though he's obviously not as vicious and ferocious as he's been, Joshua, I think that still he carries a lot of power on him. I don't think that power has left him. I just think the way he's throwing his punches is differently, since obviously switching trainers multiple times and changing styles a bit. But I think Joshua's going to catch Dillian Whyte, and Dillian Whyte's not known for having the best chin. And really, Dillian Whyte in most of his biggest fights, he got dropped in. I mean, he got dropped against Joshua the first time, got dropped against Povetkin, got dropped against Fury, got dropped against Rivas. So yeah, and Parker as well. I mean, he's been dropped and hurt in a lot of his biggest fights. I mean, really almost all of his biggest fights he's been hurt or dropped in. So I think his chin is definitely one of his weakest attributes for Whyte, and I think after 5 rounds, this fight's probably going to be like 48-47 in favor of Joshua, and then I think anywhere from like round number 6, maybe even like 49-46, it could be in favor of Joshua, but I think anywhere from round number 6, 7, and 8, I think Joshua is going to start to step on the gas pedal, and when I say that, I don't mean Joshua is going to be coming forward more or anything. I think he's just going to be landing at a higher output. I think he's just going to be throwing more. I think he's going to be landing more. And I think he's at some point going to catch Dillian Whyte in those middle to late rounds, round 6 through 8, maybe even round 9. But I think anywhere from round 6 to round 8, I see Anthony Joshua catching Dillian Whyte, maybe stopping him with one punch, dropping him, and he doesn't get up. But I think anywhere between those rounds, Joshua should get a TKO or KO win. And I think most people agree with that. And comment down below if you made it this far in the video about your prediction on this fight, and I would really appreciate it if you guys could go hit the subscribe button, leave a like, and a comment as well. So overall, I believe that Anthony Joshua is going to defeat Dillian Whyte for the second time, as I think he will defeat Dillian Whyte once again by mid-round stoppage victory, and I think this one should end anywhere between round 6, 7, or 8. And again, that's really it. I'm MB Boxing. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys later.